My mom actually told me to call off my wedding, for the sake of my golden child sister's feelings. So, I ended up uninviting them both, and the way I flipped the script? Let's just say nobody saw it coming. I'm Linda, 30 years old, and I'm engaged to Robert, who's 31. He popped the question last March. We've been together 6 years now. Robert's not just my fiancé, he's my best friend, my teammate, and hands down the most supportive person I've ever known. When he got down on one knee, it felt like everything in my life finally clicked into place. But the second I shared our happy news, my mom and my half-sister, Elizabeth, she's 24, basically turned it into a drama fest. Like my engagement was some personal threat to their stability. A little background, my mom married my stepdad, David, when I was 5. Elizabeth's their daughter. We grew up in the same house, but honestly, we were never close. More like polite strangers forced to coexist under the same roof than actual siblings. Here's the deal, Elizabeth's always had this odd urge to compete with me. Ever since we were little, if I got a better grade or someone said something nice about me, she'd sulk or throw a tantrum. It was like she saw everything as a contest. That never really changed as we got older, just escalated. I got a full ride to college, she didn't go at all. I'd been in a solid relationship with Robert for years, while Elizabeth jumped from one rocky relationship to another. So now that I'm getting married, she's treating it like I personally attacked her with my happiness. Anyway, Robert proposed during a quiet weekend at home last March. We settled on a January wedding, just a small, cozy event with around 70 guests. Something intimate that felt right for us. I was over the moon. I dove headfirst into planning, assuming my family would be happy for me. Big mistake. When I called my mom to share the big news, the first thing out of her mouth wasn't congratulations, it was, "Oh. Elizabeth's not going to take this well." At first, I laughed. I honestly thought she was being sarcastic. Turns out, she was dead serious. According to her, my engagement was going to emotionally devastate Elizabeth. Why? Because she was single and figuring her life out. I shrugged it off, chalking it up to a weird comment. But then, a few weeks later, Elizabeth out of nowhere announced she was getting married, to some guy she'd been seeing for all of 3 months. Look, I try not to judge, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't raise some red flags. Elizabeth's always been impulsive, but rushing into a wedding with a man nobody in the family had even met. It didn't sit right. Still, I kept quiet. It wasn't my place. Her life, her choices. Fast forward to July, and surprise, her whirlwind marriage exploded just as fast as it came together. Her husband, William, ended up cheating on her, with her best friend, no less. 2 months in, she filed for divorce. It was a complete mess, and honestly, I felt for her. I reached out, tried to be there, but every time I did, she shut me down. It was like she was mad at me, and I couldn't figure out why. Then it hit me, she didn't want comfort. She wanted someone to blame. From what I could gather, Elizabeth had convinced herself that my engagement was some kind of challenge, something she needed to outdo. And when her marriage collapsed, instead of facing the music, she turned her resentment on me. By the time fall rolled around, things were icy between us. We hadn't spoken since her divorce, and my mom had started acting strange. Anytime I brought up the wedding, she'd either change the subject or get real quiet. It was obvious she didn't want to talk about it, but I didn't press. I figured the whole wedding thing was just too painful for her to deal with, given Elizabeth's situation. Looking back, I should have known something was up. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepares you for the absolute absurdity of being guilt-tripped over your own wedding. I always thought the hard part of wedding planning would be figuring out the budget or managing the timeline, not having your own family turn it into some twisted emotional competition. But here we are. So it's mid-November. Robert and I finally sent out our invitations, and I was feeling pumped. Like finally, it was all coming together. That feeling lasted 2 days. Then my phone rang. It was my mom. Which was already odd. She's more of a text me once a month kind of person, not a phone call type. But I picked up, thinking maybe she was excited about the wedding or wanted to talk details. Yeah, that was optimistic. At first, everything seemed normal. She asked how I was doing, how Robert was. Then came the bomb. Out of nowhere, she goes, "So, you're really going through with the wedding?" I thought she was just double-checking the date or something. I said, "Yep, everything's locked in, venue, food, flowers, all of it. Most of it's already paid for." That's when she let out this long, dramatic sigh, the kind that says you're making a terrible mistake and I'm about to make it all about someone else. Then she said, "Well," and I swear she stretched that word out like she was delivering some great prophecy, "I've been thinking about Elizabeth, and I really think you should reconsider." I blinked, totally thrown off. Reconsider what? She paused, like she was about to launch into some TED talk. Then she finally said, "I just don't think it's a good time for a wedding, Linda. Elizabeth's still so heartbroken from the divorce. Having a big celebration right now, so soon after everything she's gone through, it feels a little insensitive." I genuinely thought I misheard her. "You think I should cancel my wedding, for Elizabeth?" She replied, dead serious, "Well, yes. She's been through so much, and watching you get married right after her divorce? It's going to be really hard for her." I sat there in shock. I didn't even know what to say. "Mom, we've been planning this wedding for almost a year. The venue's booked. Deposits are paid. This isn't just some casual dinner we can reschedule. How can you ask me to just cancel the whole thing?" I asked, totally floored. Without missing a beat, she came back with, "You could always go smaller. Maybe just do a little church ceremony with just the immediate family. That way you're still married, but you're not making a big scene. You're not flaunting it." Flaunting it? I couldn't believe those words actually came out of her mouth. "Mom, this isn't about flaunting anything," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's about celebrating the life Robert and I have built together. We've been through 6 years of ups and downs, and this day is important to us." She let out another one of those dramatic, over-the-top sighs, louder this time, like the weight of my selfishness was physically crushing her. "I just think, if you really loved your sister, you'd consider doing this for her. She needs time to heal. A big wedding right now is only going to make things harder on her." That was it. I felt the anger rising in my chest, but I tried my best to stay calm. "Mom, I get that Elizabeth's hurting," I said. "But this isn't about her. Robert and I have spent nearly a year planning this wedding. We've poured our hearts into it. It's not fair to expect us to change everything because of the choices she made." Well, that didn't go over well. Her voice sharpened instantly. "Her choices, Linda? She didn't choose to have her husband cheat on her. She didn't choose for her life to fall apart. No," I said quietly, trying not to snap, "but she did choose to marry a guy she barely knew after 3 months. And just like that, the dam broke." Mom exploded, called me cold, selfish, accused me of having zero empathy for my sister. And of course, she ended with the classic guilt trip finale, "I thought I raised you better than this." That was the last straw. "Mom, I'm not canceling my wedding. That's it. This conversation is over." I hung up, hands trembling from the sheer anger. The first person I called was Robert. I told him everything, from the start of the call to the moment I hung up. He was just as stunned as I was. "Who the hell tells their daughter to cancel her wedding because of someone else's divorce?" he asked, genuinely baffled. I really wish I could say that was the end of it. But of course, it wasn't. The next few weeks turned into a full-blown campaign. Mom started calling me every few days, always with the same tired argument in a different outfit. "Elizabeth's heartbroken. You're being insensitive. A smaller wedding would show that you care about your family." At one point, she even called Robert directly. She tried to appeal to his nice guy side, saying, "You're such a thoughtful man, Robert. I know you'll understand why this is so important for Elizabeth. He shut it down immediately. God, I love him for that. He told her, plain and simple, we were sticking to our original plans and the conversation wasn't up for debate. But of course, then Elizabeth got involved. She started texting me these little digs, like, must be nice to have everything go perfectly for you. Or, don't you think it's a little soon for such a big celebration? Then came the kicker, she actually brought up the date. January feels like a strange time for a wedding. Are you sure you didn't pick it just to rub it in my face? Rub it in her face? Was she serious? At first, I ignored her, hoping she'd lose steam. But she didn't. She kept escalating. Started calling me, leaving long voicemails dripping with guilt, about how hard it was to even think about weddings and how I was making it impossible for her to heal. The worst part? It wasn't just her. It was her and Mom, tag-teaming me like it was some coordinated emotional ambush. Mom would call and say something like, Elizabeth cried all night thinking about your wedding, and then the next day I'd get a message from Elizabeth saying, Mom's so upset about how you're handling this. It was exhausting. I felt like I was drowning in their dysfunction. This whole time, I kept asking myself, how did we get here? How did my wedding turn into their drama? And that's when it hit me, this wasn't about Elizabeth's broken marriage. It wasn't about her feelings. It was about control. They weren't sad. They were trying to manipulate me. They wanted me to shrink my life down to make room for their insecurity. And I was finally done playing along. By the time December rolled around, things had spiraled way past awkward texts or passive-aggressive comments. Elizabeth went full-blown smear campaign. She was calling up anyone who would listen, painting me as the villain in her sob story. It started small. My cousin Barbara, bless her, she's always been the unofficial family news anchor, gave me the heads up. She said Elizabeth had been reaching out to relatives, warning them that I was flaunting my wedding to intentionally hurt her. Apparently, in Elizabeth's version of the story, I chose January specifically because I knew it would be emotionally devastating for her. Never mind that my engagement happened months before she even met her now ex-husband. Logic didn't matter. She was committed to being the victim. And her stories got more dramatic by the day. Barbara said she'd heard Elizabeth tell people things like, Linda's always thought she was better than me. Or, she's throwing this perfect wedding in my face just to make me feel worse. The saddest part? Some people actually believed her. Mom, naturally, was her loudest supporter. She called me constantly, still clinging to the hope I'd back down. Elizabeth's so fragile, she'd say. She cried after seeing your invitation. You don't really need all this. Just do something simple. Every single time, I stood my ground. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't taking a toll. The real breaking point came on Christmas. Robert and I had been invited to a family dinner at my aunt's house, and I thought maybe, just maybe, it'd be a chance to breathe for a bit and enjoy the holidays. But of course, Mom and Elizabeth were there too. That should have been my first clue that the evening wasn't going to go smoothly. The tension was thick from the moment we walked through the door. Elizabeth barely acknowledged me that night. Anytime I so much as mentioned the wedding, she'd roll her eyes or let out one of those theatrical sighs that screamed, I'm the victim here. At one point, I was chatting with my aunt about floral arrangements, something completely harmless, and Elizabeth muttered just loud enough for everyone to hear, must be nice wasting all that money on a party while some of us are just trying to survive. I didn't take the bait. I knew she was fishing for a reaction. But it was clear, she wanted to make a scene. Eventually, the conversation drifted to other things, and for a second, I actually started to relax. Big mistake. Out of nowhere, Elizabeth stood up in the middle of the living room and burst into tears, full-on sobbing, hands shaking, whispering through her breakdown, I can't believe how cruel people can be. Everything stopped. Everyone just froze. My aunt rushed over to console her, asking what had happened. That's when Elizabeth launched into the performance she had clearly been rehearsing for weeks. It's just too much, she choked out between tears. I've been through so much this year, and now I have to sit here and listen to Linda talk about her perfect little wedding like nothing else matters. She knows how much I'm hurting, but she just doesn't care. And right on cue, my mom jumped in, rubbing Elizabeth's back like she'd just survived a natural disaster. She's right, Linda, Mom said, her voice dripping with judgment. You really need to be more considerate. You have no idea what this has been like for her. That was it. I'd had enough. I had kept my mouth shut for weeks, trying to take the high road, but this had gone too far. I stood there, trying to keep my voice level. This wedding has nothing to do with Elizabeth, I said firmly. Robert and I have been planning this for over a year. If she's upset, that's not on me. Maybe she should take some responsibility for rushing into a marriage with someone she barely knew, instead of blaming me for her problems. Dead silence. My aunt looked like she wished she could vanish into the couch cushions. And just like that, Elizabeth's tears turned into pure rage. How dare you, she snapped. You don't know what it's like to have your life fall apart. Everything's always been handed to you, your scholarship, your perfect boyfriend, your little dream life. You've never struggled a day in your life. I stood up, my hands trembling with anger. You're right, Elizabeth, I don't know what it's like to have my life fall apart, I said. But maybe that's because I don't make reckless decisions just to one-up other people. Maybe if you spent less time being bitter and more time figuring out your own issues, you wouldn't be in this mess. Robert reached for my hand and said quietly, "We're leaving." I didn't even hesitate. We walked out without looking back. On the drive home, my brain was on repeat, replaying the whole disaster like a bad movie. At first, I questioned whether I'd gone too far. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, no, I had every right to stand up for myself. Elizabeth had been pushing me, testing my patience, turning my wedding into her own personal soap opera. I was done playing the quiet, polite role while she painted herself as the wounded victim. But what stung the most wasn't Elizabeth's outburst. It was Mom. She didn't even pause before siding with her. There was zero attempt to understand where I was coming from or how much stress they'd been dumping on me for months. In that moment, it became painfully clear, Mom had picked her favorite. And it sure as hell wasn't me. The next day, I got a text from her. Just one sentence. You owe your sister an apology for what you said last night. She's been through so much and you were unnecessarily cruel. I didn't respond. I was done apologizing for things that weren't my fault. It was clear Elizabeth wasn't going to let this go, and Mom wasn't going to stop enabling her. I didn't know exactly what they'd do next, but I knew I had to be ready for it. Hey again. First off, thank you so much to everyone who commented on my last post. Your support really helped me stay grounded through all this chaos. After the Christmas dinner disaster, I knew something had to give. Mom and Elizabeth weren't just being difficult, they were actively sabotaging what was supposed to be one of the happiest times of my life. Ignoring them hadn't worked. Trying to reason with them only made things worse. The only option left was to draw a clear, hard boundary. So, 2 days after the dinner, I sat down with Robert. I laid it all out. Every call, every guilt trip, every tantrum. My voice shook a little when I said it, but I meant it. I think I need to uninvite them. He didn't even flinch. Honestly? I've been thinking the same thing, he said. It sucks, but this is your day, our day. You deserve to enjoy it without worrying about what kind of drama they'll bring. Hearing him say that made the decision a little less painful. But I won't lie, it still hit hard. This wasn't just about excluding 2 guests. It was about cutting out people who were supposed to love and support me. And it came with a price. I knew it would ripple through the rest of the family. Still, I couldn't let them hijack everything Robert and I had built. I sat down, opened my laptop, and drafted an email. I kept it short, to the point, and calm. No name-calling, no cheap shots, just the facts. I told them that their behavior over the past few months, spreading rumors, guilt-tripping, stirring up unnecessary drama, had made it clear they weren't supportive of my wedding. I said that for my own peace of mind, and in order to actually enjoy this milestone, I had decided to uninvite them. Then I hit send. And honestly, the second I did, it felt like I could finally breathe again. Within a few hours, the replies started rolling in. First came Mom. Her email was as dramatic as you'd expect. She called me heartless, accused me of tearing the family apart, and threw in a greatest hits collection of guilt-trippy lines. I never thought my own daughter would betray me like this, and you've chosen a man over your own blood. She even had the nerve to say my dad, who passed away years ago, would be ashamed of me. Classic manipulation. I didn't respond. Then Elizabeth chimed in. And yep, it was exactly what I figured it would be, angry, self-pitying, and full of projection. She accused me of being jealous of her. Of what, I still don't know. She claimed I was punishing her just for being honest about her feelings. She ended the message with, "You'll regret this when you realize you've destroyed this family." I didn't respond to her either. Because the truth is, I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped allowing myself to be the emotional punching bag. The fallout didn't end with just Mom and Elizabeth. Within days of sending that email, the ripple effect started hitting. Calls and texts rolled in, mostly from the relatives Mom and Elizabeth had already poisoned against me. My uncle called, totally serious, and told me I was being immature. That I needed to just let it go for the sake of family harmony. Right, because apparently, harmony only exists if I shut up and let people walk all over me. Then there was a cousin I haven't talked to in years, left me a voicemail sounding genuinely offended. "I can't believe you'd do something like this to your own mother." As if Mom was the one who'd been dragged through months of emotional manipulation. At first, all of it felt like too much. I was overwhelmed, second-guessing myself. Maybe I was being too harsh? Maybe I should have handled it differently? But then, something kind of amazing happened. The people who actually mattered started showing up. My dad's sister, Aunt Susan, gave me a call. Her voice was steady, warm. "I'm proud of you for finally standing up for yourself," she said. "You've been putting up with their crap for too long. It's about time you drew the line." Then Barbara, my cousin who'd been my one-woman intel team through all this, sent me a long text. "Don't let them get in your head," she wrote. "Everyone who actually knows you is on your side." Even my godmother, who is not the type to get involved in family drama, called me and said, "You're doing the right thing. A wedding should be about love and joy, not bitterness and guilt." It was like a pressure valve releasing. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was fighting this alone. Their support was exactly what I needed to breathe again. But of course, Mom and Elizabeth weren't about to bow out gracefully. About a week after I hit send on the uninvite email, I got another call from Barbara. Her tone said it all, equal parts entertained and annoyed. "You're not gonna believe this one," she said. "Elizabeth's telling people you uninvited her because you're threatened by her." I actually laughed. Threatened? By what, her drama queen crown? Barbara wasn't done. Apparently she's telling folks that Robert has feelings for her. That he's been flirting with her, and you found out, so now you're trying to cut her out to save face. It was so completely unhinged I didn't even know what to say. Robert? Flirting with Elizabeth? They barely said more than 5 words to each other that didn't include a polite hello. But now she's crafting this wild fantasy where my fiancé is secretly in love with her? That's just desperate, I said. No one's gonna believe that. Barbara agreed. Most people don't. But you know how she is, she'll keep spinning the story until she finds someone gullible enough to bite. At that point, I stopped trying to control her narrative. Let her spiral. I had bigger things to focus on, like protecting my peace, and making sure my wedding went off without a hitch. Robert and I sat down that weekend, went over the guest list one more time, and locked in every last detail. We even called the venue to give them a heads up, just in case Elizabeth or Mom tried to crash the event or stir something up. And yeah, we hired a couple of security guards. Something I never imagined doing for my wedding, but there we were. Through all of it, Robert was my anchor. Calm, steady, supportive. This is our day, he kept reminding me. We don't owe anyone an explanation for wanting to enjoy it in peace. By New Year's, I felt like I had my life back. Mom and Elizabeth could keep spinning whatever story made them feel like the victim, but they weren't going to ruin this for me. Okay, so it hasn't been long since my last update, but what happened next? It honestly blew my mind. If you thought Elizabeth had maxed out her chaos capacity, buckle up. By the time January rolled around, I thought I'd seen every flavor of her jealousy, spite, and drama. But apparently, she'd been saving one last trick up her sleeve, and it was gross. It started with a text Robert got one evening. We were finally relaxing on the couch after a full day of wedding prep, just breathing for a second, when his phone buzzed. He picked it up, and I watched his whole expression change. His brow furrowed. Jaw clenched. "What is it?" I asked, already knowing it wasn't good. "It's Elizabeth," he said, handing me the phone. The message read, "Hey Robert. I really need someone to talk to. I know you probably think I'm a terrible person right now, but I'm struggling a lot and I feel like you're the only one who understands. Can we meet up?" My Davidac dropped. On the surface, it sounded innocent enough. But knowing her? This wasn't a cry for help, it was bait. A setup. Robert clearly felt it too, because he didn't respond. He just turned to me and said, "This doesn't feel right." "Because it's not right," I said. "She's never even liked you. And now she wants to have a heart-to-heart?" We agreed to ignore her. But the texts kept coming. Over the next few days, she kept messaging him, saying how alone she felt, how much she appreciated his kindness, how he was the only one who had ever made her feel safe. Let me be clear, Robert had never been close with her. He was always polite, sure, but they'd never had any meaningful conversation. So the sudden flood of emotional confessions? It felt calculated. Like she was trying to bait him into saying something she could twist or use. And then, the real kicker came. A few nights later, Robert got another message, and this one crossed every single line. She wrote, "I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I know it's wrong, but I can't help it. I feel like there's something between us. Something Linda just doesn't understand. I don't know what to do with these feelings." I saw red. I was furious. Not just because she was hitting on my fiancé, but because of the sheer disrespect, the complete lack of boundaries, the manipulation, the audacity. Robert was just as disgusted. "This is insane," he said, shaking his head. "I want nothing to do with this." He blocked her immediately. And in that moment, any sliver of guilt I'd had about uninviting her disappeared. If anything, I felt even more sure that cutting her out was exactly the right move. Elizabeth knew we were just days away from the wedding. And still, she had the nerve to try and wedge herself between Robert and me with some pathetic, last-ditch play. Robert, bless him, didn't hide a thing. He showed me her message right away and said, "How do you want to handle this?" I took a deep breath. I was angry, but I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd gotten to me. "Don't reply," I told him. "Block her number. But before you do, take screenshots of everything." He nodded and did exactly that. We saved every message as proof, just in case Elizabeth decided to twist the story later. And let's be real, of course she would. The next morning, I woke up still feeling rattled. I knew I couldn't just let it slide. I didn't bother responding to Elizabeth, she wasn't worth the direct attention. But I did send out an email to my mom and a few close family members. I kept it simple and clear. I attached the screenshots and laid it all out. "This is why I uninvited Elizabeth from the wedding. This behavior is toxic and manipulative. I've done everything I can to keep the peace, but this crosses a line. I hope you understand now." The responses started rolling in. Unsurprisingly, my mom immediately leapt to Elizabeth's defense. She claimed I was misunderstanding her intentions, that I was blowing things out of proportion, and, get this, she even suggested Robert had misinterpreted the messages. "I can't believe you'd accuse your own sister of something so awful," she wrote. "Elizabeth's just going through a tough time and you're making this all about you." I rolled my eyes so hard I'm shocked they didn't fall out of my head. At this point, it wasn't even surprising. Mom had made her choice, and it wasn't me. But others saw right through it. Barbara, my cousin and ride or die since the start of this mess, called me the moment she read the email. "Are you kidding me?" she said. "I knew Elizabeth was a handful, but this is next level. I am so proud of you for cutting her off." Aunt Susan, my dad's sister, didn't mince words either. "You were absolutely right to leave her out of the wedding," she said. "She's shown again and again that she doesn't respect you. This just proves it." Their support was everything to me. It helped. A lot. But I won't pretend it erased the sting. Elizabeth's little stunt wasn't just disrespectful, it was humiliating. It felt like she'd gone out of her way to David all over everything Robert and I had built. And for what? Jealousy? Spite? Some twisted craving for attention? Probably all of the above. Whatever the reason, I knew one thing for sure, she wasn't going to win. The wedding was just around the corner, and I made myself a promise: no matter what happens, I'm not letting Elizabeth or Mom ruin this. I doubled down on security. I contacted the venue and gave them the full rundown, including names and photos of who was not allowed inside. I even hired an extra security guard, something I never imagined needing for my wedding, but this wasn't a normal situation. It might have felt a little extreme, but after the chaos they caused, I wasn't about to take chances. I was done being blindsided. Elizabeth's dirty games might have shaken me, but they didn't break me. If anything, they just made me more determined to protect my peace and enjoy my day, drama-free. Hey again. Hopefully this is the last time I have to share anything about this family circus. But what happened next, yeah. It deserves to be told. I really thought I had prepared for every possible scenario. I had backup plans, security, support, everything. But nothing can prepare you for the moment your own family tries to sabotage the happiest day of your life. The morning of the wedding started off like something out of a dream. The venue was glowing with flowers and soft light, the exact romantic vibe Robert and I had imagined for over a year. The weather was absolutely perfect. My bridesmaids were amazing, keeping me relaxed and laughing while we got ready. Robert and I had decided to do a first look before the ceremony, just the two of us. I'll never forget that moment. When I stepped outside and saw him waiting there, nervous, excited, smiling at me like I was the only person in the world, everything else melted away. Every ounce of stress, every petty text or tantrum from Elizabeth and Mom, gone. This was it. This was our moment. Nothing else mattered. Or so I thought. About 30 minutes before the ceremony, I was back in the bridal suite doing final touch-ups when Jessica, my maid of honor, came rushing in. She looked completely rattled, which immediately set off alarm bells. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Elizabeth and your mom are here." My Davidac dropped. "What? How?" "I thought security had it handled," I said, already feeling my heart race. "They did," Jessica said, "but they're at the front gate. Security stopped them, but they're making a scene." Of course they were. I took a breath, trying not to lose it. "What are they saying?" Jessica hesitated. "Your mom's crying and saying she just wants to see her daughter get married. Elizabeth's, well, she's yelling that you're a horrible person and you don't deserve this day." It was like they were doing a live performance of emotional manipulation, the musical, and they'd bought front row seats to their own show. "What do you want me to do?" Jessica asked gently. "Nothing," I said, straightening up. "Let security handle it." She nodded and hurried out. I sat down, trying to keep it together. I could hear them outside, Mom crying, Elizabeth yelling. And for a second, I almost got up. I almost marched out there to tell them exactly how done I was. But I didn't. A few minutes later, Jessica returned. "They're refusing to leave," she said. "The venue manager offered to call the police, but they're worried it'll cause a bigger scene." I groaned. This was exactly why I had uninvited them. "Do you want me to tell Robert?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, he doesn't need this stress right now," I told Jessica. "Just make sure they don't get anywhere near the ceremony." Thank God, security was solid. They kept my mom and Elizabeth corralled in the parking lot, and eventually, the venue staff called a ride service to get them off the property. But not before Elizabeth, in true theatrical fashion, screamed loud enough for half the venue to hear. "You'll regret this, Linda. You'll regret cutting out your own family." "Sure, Elizabeth. That's exactly what someone screams when they're not guilty of trying to ruin your wedding." Once they were gone, I sat down, took a deep breath, and made a promise to myself: let it go. They were out of sight, and I was not going to let them take this day from me. The ceremony? It was perfect. Everything I'd dreamed of and then some. Standing up there with Robert, surrounded by the people who actually cared about us, who had supported us through all the nonsense, I felt nothing but love. Not anger. Not hurt. Just deep, genuine gratitude. That moment, it was ours. And it was untouched by their bitterness. After the ceremony, during cocktail hour, the gossip started trickling in. Apparently, my mom and Elizabeth had been causing a scene even from the parking lot, shouting at security, throwing out accusations that I was brainwashed by Robert, and declaring that the family would never forgive me. A few guests overheard bits of it, which was embarrassing, but honestly, most people just rolled their eyes and moved on. My Aunt Susan came up to me during dinner. She gave me a warm hug and said, "I'm so proud of you for standing your ground. They showed their true colors today, and everyone sees it now." That same sentiment echoed through the night. Cousins I hadn't expected to say anything pulled me aside to offer support. Even a few of my mom's old friends came up to quietly tell me, "You did the right thing." It felt like a long overdue reckoning. People were finally seeing through the act, finally realizing that Mom and Elizabeth weren't misunderstood or mistreated. They were just toxic. The rest of the evening was a blur in the best way: laughing, dancing, real joy. Robert and I shared our first dance under twinkling lights. Jessica gave a toast that was equal parts hilarious and heartfelt. And my dad's best friend, who's basically an uncle to me, got the whole room howling with a story about catching Robert trying to sneak a plate of ribs out of a family barbecue. By the end of the night, I felt lighter than I had in months. Truly free. Elizabeth and Mom hadn't won. All their attempts to derail my happiness had only made one thing clearer: we were surrounded by love, and they weren't a part of it. Later, back at the hotel, I glanced at my phone. A dozen missed calls. Texts from my mom. I didn't read a single one. I was done giving them space in my head, or my life. Cutting them off completely was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. But standing there with Robert, surrounded by real support, I knew with everything in me that it was the right one. I got a call from Barbara. Of course it was Barbara, my unofficial family news correspondent. "You're not going to believe what just happened," she said, practically buzzing with excitement. I sighed. "What now?" "Your mom and Elizabeth had a massive blowout," she said. Like, full-on explosion. And, get this, your mom kicked Elizabeth out." I nearly dropped my phone. "Wait, what? Seriously?" "Yep," Barbara said, clearly enjoying this a little too much. "Apparently, after the wedding, Elizabeth was moping around your mom's house, totally bitter that her sabotage attempt failed. She was blaming everyone: you, Robert, security, some random cousin who apparently didn't try hard enough to stop you. Honestly, that part didn't surprise me. But then came the real drama. She turned on Mom," Barbara said. "Elizabeth started yelling that it was her fault the wedding happened. That she should have done more to stop you. She was losing it. Now that shocked me. Mom, who had defended Elizabeth to the end, who stood by her no matter how outrageous she got, had finally reached her breaking point. Barbara told me Mom yelled back. Said she was tired of the drama. Told Elizabeth she was an adult and needed to start taking responsibility for her own mess. Elizabeth, being Elizabeth, didn't take that well. She launched into a full-blown tantrum, accusing Mom of failing her, of choosing me over her, and on and on. And then Mom told her to pack up and get out. She really kicked her out? I asked, still trying to wrap my head around it. Yep, Barbara confirmed. She's staying with a friend now. But I'd bet money she'll come crawling back in a few weeks. Honestly? It felt like watching karma in real time. After all those months of siding with Elizabeth, of defending her no matter what, it finally came back to bite Mom hard. I wish I could say I felt bad. But I didn't. After everything they put me through? After all the stress, the manipulation, the lies? This was poetic justice. As for me? I'm done. I blocked their numbers, muted them on social media, and made it crystal clear to the rest of the family, I don't want updates, I don't want drama, and I don't want reconciliation. Robert and I are finally free to just live. We're starting this next chapter together, with peace, love, and a whole lot less chaos. And honestly, I couldn't be happier.